Shut it in. In front. Yes, sir. You will not come back again. Choose wisely. You will not come back again.
You know the
Oh, ah, oh, more. Ah.
Themselves a seat. You cannot stand behind.
We welcome you, sirs. Faith leaders, I thought I saw Archbishop Onaikan. There are faith leaders in the house. You're welcome, sir. Stakeholders of leadership in Africa, family and friends, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellencies, it is such an incredible honor to be anchor at such an elevated event. My name is Eugenia Abu. I'm a Nigerian broadcaster. I'm working today with a die-in-the-wool broadcaster, my brother and friend, whom I like to call The Voice. Join me to welcome Mr. Ebere Young. Ebere, where are you? Please wave from wherever you are. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today we are all gathered for the JFK at 60, Dr. Kayode Fayemi Commemorative Symposium. Today, we celebrate a man who has been in the forefront of leadership from a very young age. Dr. Kayode Fayemi is 60, and we seem to have known him for almost 120 years. It's amazing. It is also marked today that we are going to unveil a truly transformative institute to ensure that the many questions about leadership being asked across countries, across polities, across ideologies, across communities, and within the academia are answered at this institute. Should we train leaders? Is there mentorship leadership? Is Africa making the right leadership moves? Should we curate our leaders, recruit them or handpick them? What are the new definitions of leadership and who are the beneficiaries? What is the meaning of advanced leadership? Who is hungry to lead? The power of leadership and the power of policy, variables for transformation. Welcome to the Amandla Institute for Policy and Leadership Advancement, a Pan-African organization established to drive bold initiatives in harnessing leadership and policy for transformation of the African continent and the progress of global Africa. Amandla Institute, a worthy legacy by founders, His Excellency Dr. Fayemi, and of course his wife, Her Excellency Bisi Adeleye Fayemi. They are the founders of this worthy institute. The man who famously said, quote, "The litmus test for our success as leader is not how many people..."
And accountability, a government that truly serves the people. So as you celebrate 60, my head is turning around the significance and symbolism of 60. To those who are into numerology, they will tell you 60 means new beginnings, change, and mortality. For the rest 60 of your life, the new beginning starts now. And so, Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there are a few things you don't know about this man. There are perspectives about him that you don't know. Let's take this short video about some of the tributes from his friends and associates on Dr. Kayode John Fayemi.
Fayemi is a very profound character and politically astute brother from Ekiti. Not only my beloved husband, he is my friend, soulmate, supporter, encourager, confident, the most amazing human being I have ever come across. It's a blessing to humanity. It's a blessing from God and it's a blessing to humanity. And as I said, even if you don't know him, when you read Out of the Shadows, his pain makes us think, thinking makes us wise, and wisdom makes life profitable for us. The man that we are celebrating today, Diamond Jubilee, 16 years with his wife, with his family. He has suffered, and to be said out of the shadows, so we don't begin to hear of him, but through his parents, his family, because it's from a very good and quality family, which is now translating to his own nuclear family and extended families. Well, he's very amiable. He's very shy. But people don't say that aspect of him. He's extremely shy. He loved the company of himself, and people misconstrue that to be something else. You know, he just want to be with his own space and commune with himself. He's an extremely brilliant character. He loved people, extremely courageous, you know, and he's a fighter. Fayemi has the most amazing work ethic. He works so hard. He's always focused on doing something with his time. He doesn't have time for frivolities. He's always doing something, doing some work, reading, writing, attending meetings. And when he sets goals or targets, he puts everything he has into making sure that he achieves them. He's somebody that is very dependable, someone you can rely on, somebody you can trust. He's somebody I have a lot of affection for. He applies our rigorous
sense of not only ethical contemplation, but on top of that, he will also look at the pragmatic sense of whatever he's looking at. So regardless of your relationship to him, if he feels something about situations, he will tell you exactly how he feels about said situation.
He's my brother from a different mother. Together with his wife Irelu, they took care of my mother in her final days, so we became even closer. My mother lived to be 101 and had the privileges of a governor's mother in Ekiti. She was so proud of me for coming home to see her every 6 months, and Governor Fayemi made sure the elderly in Ekiti were well taken care of. But my mother was special to the Fayemis. Every time I stepped foot in Ekiti, there was Kayode Fayemi, and Irelu also was there to welcome me.
7 years ago, when I was celebrating my 60th birthday, I had decided, well, I had instructed my family that I wanted it to be a quiet affair. However, he, along with some of my friends, got together and decided that they would not accept that, and he went out of his way, along with other friends of mine, to see to it that I had what they believed and what turned out to be a befitting 60th birthday party.
Then he came to the house and I told him, Mr. Governor, I thought you would not be coming to meet with me again.
He said, Milord, he said, Milord,
if I don't come to you, where will I go to?
where will I hear the truth? As a quality leader, a great leader, as we become a habit, we came back to office. So the first time he was to sleep there, we now organized a small welcome party for him. We didn't tell him. He just wanted into the program. So he sat down, was pressing his phone, and I went to him that, I said, Oga, we are back here. How do you feel? He looked up, he said, I'm still processing it. And I told him, I said that after so this man has his own side, so I just kept it to myself. I'm still processing it. You must just look, so is this possible? And at least for the fourth time I saw the soft side of it.
Kayode and myself went to Lagos to the parents of the wife just to introduce herself, and I was very happy at that time because my little Bitu he drive it with me to Lagos to his in-law just to introduce
the United Nations, the governor of my state, Your Excellency Governor Biodun Abayomi Uyebanji, the celebrants of today, my beloved husband, Your Excellency Kayode Fayemi, CON, and our son Amanda Fayemi, Father Jimmy, is in the audience somewhere. I would like to plead at this point through all my fathers, mothers, sisters, and brothers in the audience to stand on all the protocols that have been ably established by our two wonderful compeers, because there are too many people to recognize and I don't want to run out of time. In September 1986, I was a postgraduate student in the Department of History, University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University. I had an elective class on Nigerian foreign policy taught by the late Professor Olajide Aluko at the Department of International Relations. There was this shy, quiet, soft-spoken, handsome, and brilliant guy in my class. One day I was reading in the Hezekiah Oluwasomi library, and when I was about to leave, I found out that I did not have my library card to take out the books I needed. I looked around to see where I could get some help, and there was the shy guy from my class. I walked up to him and said hello, and asked him if he had his library card on him, and if he could kindly help me take some books out. He nodded and smiled, showing a cute gap in his front teeth. I gave him the list of books I needed and promised to pick them up from his room later. As I walked away, he called out, "Please, don't forget to come." I smiled to myself. Of course, I would not forget. They were my books. The story about how I met John Olukade Fayemi at University of Ife, Obafemi Awolowo University, is well known. He is still quiet. He is still soft-spoken. He is still quite handsome. And he is still awesomely brilliant. The shy gentleman who I met in class in September 1986 has achieved so much and has become one of the most inspiring voices of our generation. I knew back then that Kayode Fayemi would be great. How did I know this? He was, and still is, disciplined, focused, and serious. JKF is not a sports fan. He prefers to spend time poring over The Economist or Newsweek. When many look to clubs, pubs, parties, and the like to unwind, Kayode is fixated on the news cycles on BBC, CNN, or Al Jazeera, and more recently, Arise Television. People might wonder, so what exactly does he do to relax? He relaxes all right. He reads anything and everything. He debates the future of Africa, the potential of Nigeria, the new wave of globalization, the failings of the international peace and security architecture, the role of civil society in ensuring the sustainability of democratic gains, and so on and so forth. When he's done debating, he writes about all the lessons he has learned over the years as a scholar, activist, politician, community leader, Pan-Africanist, and global citizen. JKF has always the very best, not just what we believe our circumstances or our context dictate. He is always looking ahead to what is possible, not fixated on what is not achievable in the short term. Envisioning, strategic thinking, leveraging relationships and partnerships to accomplish goals have always been JKF's strength. As we are gathered here today to launch the Amanda Institute for Policy and Leadership Advancement, which you'll learn more about later, and to celebrate this great son of Africa as he turns 60, I thank you all for making the time to join us. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our leaders from all over our country from Nigeria. Leaders from across Africa, and there are many of them here who have come in their capacity as trustees and board members of the Amanda Institute for Policy and Leadership Advancement, from the African diaspora and our family and friends from far and near. Thank you all for being here and enjoy the program. Jabu Molu, happy birthday.
All distinguished Nigerians that are here this morning because of time. I have 5 minutes. I adopt the protocol as established, and on behalf of the government and people of the states, I once again welcome all of us to this occasion. As a government, we are glad for the life of Governor Kayode Fayemi. It has been 60 years of positive impact to humanity, globally, nationally, and at the supranational level. Sir, on behalf of your people from Ekiti, we are immensely grateful to you for your service to Ekiti people. History will surely be kind to you. You build on the achievements of your predecessors, as led by Governor Adebayo, Governor Shegun Onisea. Governor Fauci sent his apology. He said the country is coming into here. But my desire, on your sister's value, is that now that you have joined the Elders Forum, I think you will slow down a bit and spend more time with the yesterday. sir. Have a good day.
Of the world. And second, we are GCON. Just a reminder that we can also get to those heights as our men do. Your Excellency, Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by Your Excellency, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, Your Excellency, the Governor of Ekiti State, Your Excellency, former President General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR, our father, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, GCON, honorable ministers and governors, and let me just say former because I have never seen so many of my former colleagues in one room for a very long time, and it is an honor. And the present ministers and governors, royal fathers that are ably representing our royal mothers, excellencies, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just trying to put women on the stand, just as we have. It is a pleasure to join you all today as we celebrate the life of a remarkable contributions of my dear brother, Dr. Fayemi, extraordinary leader, brilliant scholar, and a devoted husband and father. Welcome to the 6th floor. This milestone is not just a celebration of your life, but also of your enduring legacy in public service, in scholarship and leadership. As Governor of Ekiti State, your visionary reforms in governance, agriculture and infrastructure laid the foundation for sustainable development. And your tenure as a Minister of Mines and Steel Development is a testament of transformational change with your efforts to reposition Nigeria's mining sector, playing a crucial role not only in diversifying the economy, but also in creating jobs. My dear brother, I'm particularly pleased to congratulate you on the launch of the Mandela Policy and Leadership Institute. Our world today is at a critical juncture, and it's marked by complex challenges and conflicts. In Africa and the region, we are grappling with political instability, weakened democratic institutions, and growing divisions between and within regions. These challenges not only undermine the progress in sustainable development, peace and economic growth, but they're also reversing the hard-won gains in these areas. In these challenging times, the values of Pan-Africanism, unity, cooperation and shared progress are more important than ever. Pan-Africanism reminds us that our future is interconnected, and by working together across borders, we can create a prosperous and peaceful Africa. The opportunity today that we have of Africa is not just us rising, but it is also to bring the world back from the brink. Today we are living in surreal times, where the rule of law is AWOL, where leadership is questioned, and where trust is broken and our social fabric is tearing. And that they have a Nigerian at the helm of affairs who is trying to fill these gaps and address leadership is just amazing, and it is where Nigeria should be, leadership in Africa and the world. By fostering regional collaboration and harnessing that leadership and policy for transformational change, the Institute is poised to drive the much-needed dialogues and actions that can propel Africa towards sustained transformation. And let me just underscore the importance of dialogues, because unless we are listening to one another, we are expressing our views free from fear, free from judgment. Unless we do that, we will not get the richness of that diversity. We will not get the leadership that we need that represents each and every one of us. We must all be represented, and we can all agree to disagree, and we don't have to like each other, but we do have to get behind the leadership that this nation of over 240 million people so desperately needs. With its commitment to addressing leadership policy interface in Africa, the Institute is set to be a key player in shaping the future of African governance, ensuring that the next generation of leaders are equipped with the knowledge, skills, and visions to meet the challenges ahead, and to reclaim Africa's place in the world. And I think to be reminded today, as I look at the many people in this room, my fathers, but also our generation, I think His Excellency the Governor of Ekiti said, Kaide, welcome to the Elders Group. I think we're the last generation that knows what good is and has benefited from Nigeria. We owe, it's not entitlement, we owe the next generations a return on that investment that was made in us. I'd like to commend you and on this laudable initiative, As you have wisely said, the litmus test for our success is as leaders and how many people we lead, but how many are transformed into leaders. But may I add to that, how we inspire followers. Because today you can be leading very well, you look behind you and there is no one. So we really need to also inspire our followers who have lost trust along the way. Excellencies, friends, as we celebrate Dr. Kaide today, I would like to honor his family, but especially my sister, Erin. Your unwavering support has been instrumental to his success, and I think he would be the first to acknowledge that. You're a passionate advocate for women and children's rights and social justice, and you've stood alongside him and together. You've set and you continue to set an example of how collaboration, dedication can drive meaningful change. So I look forward to being like you when I grow up. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, expectations are really high of every forum that comes together to discuss this nation and the future of Africa. And the gaps are enormous. They will not be filled in our generation, but perhaps we can begin to lay those foundations for the next generation. Our young people are restless for change, and they demand it. So let's get to work and talk. Thank you.
And the ever-changing seasons that define the face of our native land. My body has frozen in our frosts and in our latter-day snows. It has thawed in the warmth of our sunshine and melted in the heat of the midday sun. The crack and the rumble of the summer thunders, lashed by startling lightning, have been a cause both of trembling and of hope. The fragrances of nature have been as pleasant to us as the sight of wild blooms of the citizens of the veldt. The dramatic shapes of the Drakensberg, the soil-colored waters of the Ligwa, Ikreli, Notuga, and the sands of the Karahat have all been panels of the set on the natural stage on which we act out the foolish deeds of the theater of the day. At times, and in fear, I have wondered whether I should concede equal citizenship of our country to the leopard and the lion, the elephant and the springbok, the hyena, the black mamba, and the pestilential mosquito. I am the grandchild of the warrior men and women that intends the Kukuli land. Patriots at Tetrail and Petu took to battle. The soldier of the Shweshwe and Umunyane taught never to dishonor the cause of freedom. I am the child of no mouse. I am he who made it possible to trade in the world markets in diamonds and gold and the same food for which our stomachs yearn. Being part of all of these people, and in the knowledge that none dares contest that assertion, I shall claim that I am an African.
Fayemi, His Excellency President John Mahama, President of the Historic Republic of Ghana, esteemed panelists, distinguished guests and participants, comrades, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to apologize most sincerely for my failure to be with you today as you launch the Amandla Institute. The reason for this is that this launch coincides exactly with the delivery by our President Cyril Ramaphosa today in Parliament of what in our country we call the State of the Nation Address, the SONA. It is understood and expected that as a former head of state, I must attend this important occasion when the current head of state addresses the nation on the government's perspectives for the current year, 2025. You will understand that I have to honor this expectation. However, I say all of this with great regret. That regret derives from the fact that in been very greatly honored and privileged to attend the launch of the Amandla Institute. I therefore take this opportunity to congratulate our friend and fellow combatant for Africa's Renaissance, Dr. Fayemi, CON, for the launch of this institute. I'm very glad indeed that so many of our esteemed fellow Africans set aside time personally to participate at this launch. The launch takes place under the relevant but challenging theme, renewing the Pan-African idea for changing times, and this signals the importance we must attach to the formation of the Institute. The rest of the theme of this launch demands that correct answers to the strategic matters pertaining to the leadership and policy challenges and opportunities confronting our continent. Like all of us present at this launch of the Institute, I'm greatly inspired that our friend Fayemi took the initiative to establish the Institute. This is because I'm certain that thereby our continent has acquired a vitally important think tank which will add immensely to Africa's capacity to find the right answers to the many challenges she faces. Program Director, immediately the theme renewing the Pan-African idea for changing times suggests two things. One of these is that somehow the Pan-African idea has receded in terms of contemporary African political practice. The second is that we must understand that the global setting in which our continent exists and must pursue its Pan-African goals is changing to a strategically important degree. Responding to these correct theses, I'd like to start by saying something about some of the objectives our continent has set itself. In May 2013, to mark the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the OAU, the 21st Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly of Heads of State and Government adopted the 50th anniversary solemn declaration. Among other things, that declaration says, "We African Heads of State and Government, guided by the vision of our union and affirming our determination to build an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven and managed by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the international arena, declare our strong commitment to accelerate the African Renaissance by ensuring the integration of the principles of Pan-Africanism in all our policies and initiatives, and will move with speed towards integration and merger of the regional economic communities as the building blocks of the Union. We will endeavor for Africa to take its rightful place in the political, security, economic and social systems of global governance towards the realization of its renaissance and establishing Africa as a leading continent. And thus we reiterate our commitment to Africa's active role in the globalization process and international forums, including in the financial and economic institutions. We pledge to act together with our peoples and the African diaspora to realize our vision of Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. The last OAU Assembly of Heads of State and Government held in Lusaka, in Zambia in 2001, adopted what ultimately became known as the New Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD. In October of that year, the NEPAD leadership issued a comprehensive document on NEPAD, and among others, the document says that this new partnership for Africa's development is a pledge by African leaders based on a common vision and a firm and shared conviction that they have a pressing duty to eradicate poverty and to place their countries, both individually and collectively, on a path of sustainable growth and development, and at the same time to participate actively in the world economy and body politic. It said the poverty and backwardness of Africa stand in stark contrast to the prosperity of the developed world. And the new partnership for Africa's development calls for the reversal of this abnormal situation by changing the relationship that underpins it. Africans are appealing neither for the further entrenchment of dependency through aid, nor for marginal concessions. We are convinced that an historic opportunity presents itself to end the stage of underdevelopment that afflicts Africa. The resources, including the capital, technology, and human skills that are required to launch a global war on poverty and underdevelopment exist, and exist in abundance, and are within our reach. Across the continent, Africa has declared that we will no longer allow ourselves to be conditioned by circumstance. We will determine our own destiny and call on the rest of the world to complement our efforts, unquote. Our quoted passages from the AU 2013 Solemn Declaration and the 2001 NEPAD founding document, because these state precisely what our continent wants to achieve. In all instances, informed by the Pan-African ideal to which this launch of the Amandla Institute has drawn our attention. Accordingly, no one among us or elsewhere on our continent and the African diaspora can say that as a continent we have not identified the objectives we pursue, and therefore that we have not defined the Africa we want. Through both the OAU and the AU, we have indeed defined the Africa we want, including through Agenda 2063. Necessarily, the next important question arising from this is what have we done to build the Africa we want? Before we address this important question, let me say something about the global setting within which Africa pursues its objectives. The defeat of Nazism in 1945, the subsequent emergence of the new socialist countries, and the virtual total defeat and destruction of the global system of colonialism created excellent conditions for the realization of the African aspirations. Among others, all this turned the United Nations and especially its General Assembly into a true friend of the peoples of Africa. For instance, when the General Assembly adopted its Millennium Declaration, it devoted a few paragraphs specifically to Africa. In a section headed Meeting the Special Needs of Africa, it said, among others, we will support the consolidation of democracy in Africa and assist Africans in their struggle for lasting peace, poverty, eradication, and sustainable development, thereby bringing Africa into the mainstream of the world economy. In September 2002, the General Assembly adopted the United Nations Declaration on the New Partnership for Africa's Development, which said, quote, we recommit ourselves to meeting the special needs of Africa as recognized in the Millennium Declaration and other agreements. We welcome the New Partnership for Africa's Development as an African-led, owned, and managed initiative, and recognize that it is a serious commitment to addressing the aspirations of the continent. In 2008, the General Assembly adopted a political declaration on Africa's development needs and said, I quote, we recommit ourselves to reinvigorate and strengthen a global partnership of equals based on our common values, mutual accountability, shared responsibility, and the determination to collectively act for our common future and to mobilize the resources, including human, financial, and technological, required to end poverty, hunger, and underdevelopment in Africa, with the explicit objective of turning existing commitments into concrete actions. Unquote. For its part, in 2002, the G8, the then leading group of industrialized countries, adopted the G8 Africa Action Plan, which said, inter alia, I quote, we, the heads of state and government of 8 major industrialized democracies and the representatives of the European Union, meeting with African leaders at Kananaskis, welcome the initiative taken by African states in adopting the New Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, a bold and clear-sighted vision of Africa's development. We will pursue this action plan in our individual and collective capacities and through the international institutions to which we belong. And we will necessary steps to ensure the effective implementation of our action plan, and will review progress in our next summit based on a final report from our personal representatives for Africa, unquote. Surely, given such commitments by all nations through the UN General Assembly, as well as dominant global economic players, Africa's dreams would be realized. In this regard, in his 2001 document website, Nepal had this to say, and I quote, in Africa, 340 million people, or half the population, live on less than $1 per day. The mortality rate of children under 5 years of age is 140 per 1,000. Life expectancy of death is only 54 years. Only 58% of the population have access to safe water. The rate of illiteracy for people over 15 is 41%. There are only 18 mainline telephones per 1,000 people in Africa, compared to 146 for the world as a whole, and 567 for the high-income countries. Unquote. In its economic development in Africa report 20 years later, in 2021, UNCTAD reported that in Africa, 34% of households are below the international poverty line. And with a regional Gini coefficient of around 0.40, they form part of some of the most unequal societies in the world. With regard to trade, the share of Africa in world trade has declined steadily over the past 50 years. And it continues that the period of unprecedented growth in the 2000s has not translated into significantly improved livelihoods for most people in Africa, as the income gap between rich and poor has widened. For each part, the World Bank reported that about 464 million people in Africa are still living in extreme poverty in 2024. The region continues to grapple with high debt risks, with 53% of high debt eligible countries in the region at high risk or already in debt distress. And it says the high debt burden of African governments is leading to painful trade-offs. It is curtailing the fiscal space to invest in development priorities such as human capital, energy, transportation, and it is raising their vulnerability to shocks, particularly for countries with access to global capital markets and other concessional financing sources. As a result, the risk of external debt distress in sub-Saharan Africa remains high. Unquote. The region's growth performance is solid inadequate to reduce extreme poverty and boost prosperity. In a 2020 article entitled UN at 75 years, Africa and its trade relationship, Professor Mark Kogan writes in the area that, quote, since the start, UN peacekeeping in Africa has been a miserable failure, and mentions the 1994 Rwanda genocide specifically. And he said the United Nations admits that the goal of poverty eradication is not close to being met. And projections suggest that over 23% of sub-Saharan Africa's projected 2030 population of 1.7 billion will be living in extreme poverty. In other words, of the 500 million people that will be living in extreme poverty by 2030, 479 million will be from sub-Saharan Africa, unquote. The new Sustainable Development Goals, which contain 17 goals with 169 targets and 232 specific indicators, also put Africa on the back foot. Says a professor related to development finance, already 20% of all African countries do not raise enough immediate revenues for essential state functions, while in sub-Saharan Africa that rate rises to 33%. In 2024, Africa Africa Sustainable Development Report issued by the UN Economic Commission for Africa and others makes this disturbing but predictable finding. For Africa, less than 6% of the 32 measurable SDG targets are on track to be achieved by 2030. Obviously, there are more of such statistics about the challenges Africa faces that we can cite. However, I believe that it is not necessary. To close this part of my comments, I would like to quote a very interesting observation which was made in January 2023 by Max I, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Ghent. He made this observation in an article written in the light of the proposal made by the then chair of the G77 plus China, Miguel Diaz-Canel, President of the Republic of Cuba, for the resuscitation of the project for the new international economic order. The next article is entitled the NIEO, the new international economic order in a state of permanent insurrection, and says, quote, in the 1970s, the countries of the South mounted a collective assault on the world economic order. They proposed instead a new international economic order to challenge the new colonial system. Such a project painted the future sky with dazzling plans for prosperity. A broad variety of socialist and radical nationalist projects to change the world. The strengths of these projects were numerous. However, the Western states were eager to thrust out the South into fruitless convenience short of serious commitments. If the front was not radical enough to win, it was too radical for the imperialist powers. If national capitalisms in the periphery were not possible because of the nature of accumulation on a world scale, which demanded subordination, labor reserves, value transfer, and relying on peripheral disarticulation from markets and commodities. It was far too radical from the perspective of northern monopoly capital. Why, after all, would northern monopoly capital accept change in terms of trade, which were to its advantage? Why would it allow for draining labor reservoirs, which depressed peripheral wages and were central to the systemic stability of capitalism? Why would it allow peripheral sovereign industrialization when there were so many gains to be secured from disarticulated industrialization, subcontracting, and other modes of turning southern industrialization into labor arbitrage? There are two instances which come immediately to mind to substantiate what we may call or describe as the Max I thesis. These are the G8 Africa Action Plan and the Doha Development Round of the WTO. As we have said, the very significant G8 Africa Action Plan, which strikingly provided for mutual accountability between the developed North and developing Africa, was adopted by the G8 at their summit meeting in Kananaskis, Canada in 2002. The G8 summit returned to Canada 8 years later in 2010. This latter summit confirmed that the G8 Africa Action Plan had ceased to exist. So much so that the host country, Canada, refused that a discussion of the plan, of the fate of the plan, should even appear on the agenda of the meeting. This was despite the specific request for this item, and request from the African countries which attended the meeting. Simply, the G8 killed the Africa Action Plan for the reasons stated by Max I. You can say the same about the Doha Development Round, which kicked off in Doha, Qatar in 2001. It finally collapsed 10 years later in 2011. In 2002, the Asian Development Bank said, and I quote, the new trade round launched at the 4th Ministerial Conference of the WTO in November 2001 in Doha Humanitarian Organization Oxfam also said, quote, the Doha Development Round was meant to rebalance decades of unfair rule to reduce its agricultural subsidies as to improve access to their markets by agricultural exports from the developing South, as well as reducing the negative impact of their cheap, subsidized agricultural products on similar products in the countries of the South. In brief, as in the case of the G8 Africa Action Plan, the developed North killed the entire Doha Development Round for the reasons stated by Max I. Everything we've said so far makes the universal statement, the unequivocal statement, that Africa is very far from achieving the socio-economic objectives set, for instance, by NEPAD. In this context, one of the things Africa must do through the AU is urgently to convene a high-level African think tank with the tasks, one, to review all the policies and programs in which the continent is engaged to achieve sustainable development, and two, to make recommendations with time frames about the actions to be taken to achieve various objectives, such as those that stated in agendas 2030 and 2063. And three, state what steps should be taken to address such obstacles as may exist or emerge to frustrate the achievement of the set objectives, and alternatively, what measures should be put in place to take advantage of such opportunities as may exist or emerge to facilitate the realization of the set objectives. Our broad theme correctly points us to the reality of changing times, within which we must discuss Africa's challenges. Last month, at the January this year, the new U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, made some important remarks during an interview. He said, and I quote, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we were the only power in the world. And so we assumed this responsibility of sort of becoming the global government in many cases, trying to solve every problem. And so it's not normal for the world to simply have a unipolar power. That was an anomaly. It was a product of the end of the Cold War, but eventually you are going to reach back to a point where you have a multipolar world, multi-great powers in different parts of the planet. We face that now with China, and some extent Russia, and then you have rogue states like Iran and North Korea you have to deal with, unquote. Secretary Rubio is quite correct that an important element of our changing times is the struggle for a multipolar as opposed to a unipolar global order. Unfortunately, I do not have time to make a comprehensive presentation on this issue, and will therefore be brief. The war in Ukraine is a manifestation of this battle between multipolarity and unipolarity. The US in particular wanted to see Russia defeated and positioned such that it would not be in a position ever to challenge US hegemony. This US project has failed in good measure because it could not achieve the global isolation of Russia, which it sought. An article entitled Global Power Shift and Multipolarity says, I quote, the global balance of power is shifting towards a multipolar and fragmented world order. This has significant implications for Africa's international relations. States such as China, Russia, United Arab Emirates, Turkey are increasing their political, economic, and military involvement on the continent. They offer African states new forms of cooperation and thus potentially more opportunities to shape their foreign relations, unquote. Inevitably, this will also mean intense competition. And here I will only use the example of China and the United States. According to the FOCAC Beijing Action Plan 2025 to 2027, China will provide $50.7 billion financial support to Africa during this period. In addition, among others, China will finance 1,000 projects during the same period to improve people's livelihoods. This is substantial support for Africa's development program. On the other hand, the current Trump administration has not as yet produced its Africa policy. Such policy was announced by then National Security Advisor to President Trump, the well-known Ambassador John Bolton, in 2018 during the earlier Trump administration. Among other things, Ambassador Bolton said, and I quote, "We have prioritized developing this document because we understand that lasting stability, prosperity, independence, and security on the African continent are in the national interest of the United States. Our first priority, enhancing U.S. economic ties with the region, is also vital to safeguarding the economic independence of African states and protecting U.S. national security interests. Great power competitors, namely China and Russia, are rapidly expanding their financial and political influence across Africa to gain a competitive advantage over the United States. China uses bribes, opaque agreements, and the strategic use of debt to hold states in Africa captive to Beijing's wishes and demands. Russia, for its part, is also seeking to increase its influence in the continent through corrupt economic dealings. In short, said Bolton, the predatory practices pursued by China and Russia stunt economic growth in Africa, threaten the financial independence of African nations, inhibit opportunities for U.S. investment, interfere with U.S. military operations, and pose a significant threat to U.S. national security interests, unquote. This example about what China said about Africa in 2024 and what the US said about Africa in 2018 graphically indicates the challenges Africa will face in terms of competing international players in the context of the establishment of a global multipolar order. Our continent, especially the AU, has to prepare properly to position Africa correctly within the emerging multipolar world, which, for instance, has seen the emergence of the important BRICS group of countries and the insertion into the global agenda of such matters as the global de-dollarization of international economic relations. What this means is that our continent must pay particular attention to the urgent strategic task to develop a leadership cadre capable of defending and advancing Africa's interests within the context of competing global players in a situation of both continuing globalization and the institution of a multipolar world order. This requires an African cadre of leadership which both understands and is truly committed to the Pan-Africanist perspective. This also means an African cadre of leadership that is genuinely committed to serve the people of Africa, firmly opposed to corruption and other self-serving behavior by people in leading positions. It means an African cadre of leadership which is well schooled in the operational, tactical, and strategic objectives our continent pursues at any particular time. It demands that the fellow Africans charged with the full-time task to defend and advance Africa's interests, the permanent representatives at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, as well as the AU Commission, must be people of high caliber, consistent with the quality of the cadre of leadership we've tried to convey. The immensity of the task we face in this regard is confirmed by the succession of negatives, which have meant that the AU has gone missing as the conflict in Libya remains unresolved, as war raged in Ethiopia from November 2020. The same concerning the AU has happened as war has raged in Sudan starting from April 2023, as the formation formation of the Alliance of Sahel States has threatened the very survival of ECOWAS. And as many African countries have once more fallen into a debt trap, and so on. I'm very glad that today we are launching the Amandla Institute for Leadership and Policy Advancement, which must and will play an important role in helping our continent to accomplish the tasks we have indicated. Please accept my best wishes for the success of the launch of the Amandla Institute. And thank you very much.
The Chief Servant, His Excellency Mwazu Babangida Aliyu, former Governor of Niger State, who is here with us. His Excellency Abdul Fattah Ahmed, former Governor of Kwara State, is also here with us. His Excellency Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, former Governor of Sokoto State, is here with us. And His Excellency Right Honorable Emeka Ihedioha, former Deputy Speaker and former Governor of Imo State, also here with us. I welcome you. Thank you very much. And so Your Excellencies,
to recognize, appreciate, and celebrate all the women of Africa and the women of the world. Former Head of State, the Venerable General Yakubu Gowon. Former Vice President, he took it calmly. In private conversations, I addressed him as Baba. But come 2027, he will still take the first choice. Former elder statesman and former national chairman of the APC, Baba Bisi Akande and John Odige Oyogun. Former president of the Senate, my friend Bukola Saraki, GCON. The host governor, Right Honorable Abiodun Abayomi Oyebanji, Badge. Governor of Ondo State, Mr. Lukia Adetiwa. Senate Majority Leader, Senator Michael Fayemi. And I would like to use you as my point of reference to recognize and appreciate current and former members of the National Assembly. Former chairman of the JKF, Senator Abdul Aziz Yani Abubakar. I would like to use you to appreciate and celebrate all our former colleagues in the Governor's Club. I have seen Right Honorable Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, Richard Adeni Adebayo Otumba, and his beautiful wife Erelu, former Governor Obekiti Shegun Oni, and my colleagues in the Federal Executive Council, Muhammad Badaru Abubakar and Abubakar Atiku Babu. There are so many VIPs here. I would rather say, I respect all of you. I cherish all of you. Gabriel Suswan, the senator. My friend, the Otumba of Benue, is also seated here. And of course, the celebrant, and his beautiful wife. And I want to specially recognize our father, Cardinal John. And my sister said, referred to him as Archbishop. She's a Catholic, but she referred to our Cardinal as Archbishop. Your Royal Father, Oba Oni Ade Enitan Ogunisi Ojaja II. Your Royal Highness, the Emir of Kano, Muhammad Sanusi II. King Jaja of Okoko, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the diplomatic corps. The world has never suffered from a scarcity of ideas. Nations and civilizations have risen on the strength of visionaries, and they have also crumbled under the weight of ideas left in the dusty vault of time.
But today, the world as we know it is going to a reality in which we cannot afford to be preloading bystanders. This gathering is an acknowledgement of this dilemma, and I am honored to join my brother and friend, a scholar statesman of the pioneers breed, John Fayemi, in his mission to be an intellectual prototype for the continent. The post-idea world is not a world without ideas. It is a world where the excuse of not knowing has expired. Emerging technologies like the large language models of artificial intelligence and machine learning have shattered traditional barriers to knowledge. The answers to our most complex problems are no longer elusive. They exist at our fingertips, generated in mere seconds. The real question is no longer what we should do. That has been answered a billion times over. The real question is who will act. Who will rise above inertia and ensure that our ideas do not remain ink on paper, buried in symposiums and policy documents. For centuries, Africa was plundered for its resources. For these centuries, we are mostly prophets of lamentation and despair. Today, we face an even worse risk. The risk of being plundered for our protection. This is so because the algorithm shaping global power, the AI rewriting economies, the policies dictating climate futures are being coded in distant capitals while we linger in debates over yesteryears. The post-idea world forgives no such hesitation. It was only those quick to translate their ideas into actions, or compete with the best ideologues and scientists from other parts of the world. Dr. Fayemi and Mrs. B.C. Fayemi understood this, and that is why we are here. Amandra Institute for Policy and Leadership Advancement would have been just another think tank for empty theories and fancy talk shows if it were not the brainchilds of men that have had the privilege of fusing intellectual rigor with actionable courage. Dr. Fayemi's legacy, from pro-democracy activism to public administration, teaches us that leadership in this era demands more than ideation. It requires the stamina to execute, the grit to dismantle barriers, and the wisdom to see the inventions of the current wave of the Industrial Revolution not as a threat, but as a tool to reclaim Africa's agency. It was unsurprising that when the world converged on Davos, Switzerland last month, for the 55th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, the focus was on how we could collaborate for the intelligent age. Their 2025 Global Risk Report is a call to each policymaker to pay attention to the gathering storm about to disrupt the fragility of the world, particularly our security, climate, and economic stability. It was not alarmism to point out that Africa has the gloomiest profile. This is because while terrorism and insurgency destabilize fragile states, global geopolitical tensions are diverting international attention and resources away from our security needs. The reflection of Africa in the mirror is not one of hopelessness. There are 1,000,001 ideas for every problem we see. We know what to do as climate change threatens our continent, and when extreme weather events like droughts and floods disrupt agriculture and livelihoods. We know the policy choices to prioritize to mitigate our economic instability, driven by inflation and debt crisis. And we also know how the historical greed and grievances that have brought us to where we are. We also know the devastation of the rise of misinformation and cyber threats, and what will happen if we don't build public trust and the institution to combat our high standard about the digital age into fuel for innovative thinking. Whatever differences across the continent, one part that can be eroded by our infighting is that we are in the age of machines, and we can't fight our development dilemma with spears and arrows, while the rest of the world is fighting the same battle with missiles and tanks. The world is not waiting for Africa to catch up. While we pass political rivalries, others pass data sets. While we litigate history, others engineer futures. The trend of progress accelerates, yet too many of our leaders cling to old carriages. These are our client state mentalities, our dependency on foreign blueprints, and our governance by hashtag activism. This is indeed the tragedy of our time. The founding of Amandla Institute emerges as an antidote to this paralysis. We are here not only to generate more ideas, but to create executors. We need leaders who will policy as a campaign, not a slogan. We need visionaries who see AI as a collaborator, not a competitor. We need a generation of Africans who recognize that Pan-Africanism, renewed for this age, must be rooted in actionable sovereignty. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the renaissance of this country will not be gifted, it must be built. For too long, we have outsourced our thinking. For too long, we have relied on institutions and ideologies that treat us as consumers, not creators. But the post-idea world deserves excuses. With the democratization of knowledge, we must empower our youth to innovate in tech hubs across the continent, from Cairo down to Nairobi to Lagos, building unicorns without the permission of any gatekeepers. What they lack is not ideas, but ecosystems, systems where policy, funding, and the political will converge to scale their journeys. This is why, Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is why leadership matters. Leaders must evolve from custodians of power to architects of platforms. Our imagination of Africa must be one where every government ministry houses AI strategies, where continental trade policies are drafted by homegrown think tanks like the Amandla Institute, not foreign consultants, and where made in Africa signifies not raw materials, but algorithms, green tech, and cultural capital. We are not here to be spectators in the post-idea world. The pace of change will not pause for Africa's historical grievances or applaud our elegies for lost time. Regret that the opening stanza warns. Rise history in the ink of what if. The Amandla Institute must be a furnace where regret is melted into resolve. It must be a place that trains leaders to ask, what will I break, build, or build my legacy on today? And I have no doubt that the founders are prepared for this revolution. My candid advice for the African youth is that you are the first generation with tools to live for colonial legacies. For those of us privileged to lead you through this interesting time, we must never forget that our legacy can only be sustained by the systems we institutionalize. Africa seeks collaboration, not patronage. This is the vision I want Amandla Institute to convey to the world. We are not a testing ground for experiments, but equals in co-creating solutions. As we corner the pioneers, let us channel their restlessness. Let this symposium be remembered not for its eloquence, but for its ignition. It's time for Africa to stop debating ideas and start deploying them. The Mandela Institute will become a command center for the continent, turning thinkers into doers, policies into progress, and Pan-African ideas into lived realities. The post-idea world belongs to Africa. It belongs to those who act. Africa must not see prosperity as a gift. It is a prize to be won. And to win, we must embrace the responsibility of leadership. Not just in politics, but in policy, in business, in technology, in governance, and in shaping the narratives that define our place in the world. By 2050, Nigeria will be the third most populous nation on earth. We will surpass the United States. And the trajectory of global growth is facing Africa. And Nigeria must make or mark that destination. Of the dozen unicorns in Africa, 8 are in Nigeria. The latest one, Monica, became a unicorn less than 2 months ago. I urge you, I beseech this esteemed crowd, made up of intellectuals, made up of brainy people, irrespective of differences in political affiliations, religious persuasions, sectional or tribal backgrounds. What binds us together supersedes whatever that divides us. We have to make Africa work, and Nigeria has to work before Africa can work. Once again, I beseech thee, I implore on our leaders seated here. I'm begging you in the name of God. Let's unite for the common good of our people. Thank you.
First batch to quickly join in the second batch. If it's here, it's going to be in the second batch. Keep coming. Yes, 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 yes. All 7 governors, all 7 ministers, Mr. Vice President and the Chief Host will remain in this. Former leaders of the National Assembly, of course, party leaders, all former governors, all former ministers, all former governors, all former ministers, to join former leadership of the National Assembly. Chief Johnson, we're waiting for you to fall in this picture. Thank you. This is the photograph for all former ministers, all leaders of the national. We are delaying our picture. Thank you, sir. The photograph will be taken, and then we have the next batch. If you will all fall away, please. Please fall away. The next batch. The board of Amandla first. The board of Amandla.
In the previous decade before, we as school children, we fought against colonialism in our elders. So that Africa will be independent politically, independent economically, independent. It's not a lack of vision. The vision has been clearly stated. There is nothing to say about it. When you look at the AU Charter, you look at all the documents, all these declarations, they are perfect. What remains to be done is how to implement them. The issue is about implementation. And I said in many of my statements that today we have a situation whereby there is a lack of common vision
in terms of getting together, the countries getting together.
You can think of a continental vision. We're not short of that. You can think of what created NEPAD, and in your comment, NEPAD has collapsed as a project. Perhaps one of the reasons as well is that there's a way in which we think about African states and individual leaders. So that when the 5 or 6 leaders that came together to develop a continental agenda like that left their positions of authority in their countries, nothing else remained. Can I leave us with the thinking that even in Nigeria, as the Vice President of Nigeria was talking and saying that Africa can't work unless Nigeria works. You can say that Africa can't work unless South Africa works or Senegal works, but we are successful individually as Africans. We're not collectively successful. Every individual wants to succeed alone, but we do not think about what that means cumulatively in terms of how Africa is seen in the world. If you want to challenge this, do so and do so powerfully. How can we be collectively successful? But Professor Ambassador Abdullahi said, I love this question I'm about to ask you as you reflect on the challenges of today from your own personal experience. Because Pan-Africanism is often seen as the whole of Africa as the African states. And in your reflections, how does actually Africa travel? How do African peoples think about the collective? What did you see when you were ambassador of Ghana to Brazil? Please give us just a few moments of your reflection on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate that question. So I have a lot to say. I was furiously taking notes in all responses, including yours. So I'm going to try and confine myself to the particular observations I had as ambassador. I have to say I had the privilege of being Ghana's ambassador, and although I was located in Brasilia, Ghana's mission to Brazil is concurrently accredited to all 12 nations of continental South America. So I was ambassador to the whole of South America. I have the privilege of becoming actually the first ambassador to present my credentials to all 12. So I visited all 12 countries at least once. And my specific answer to your question is based on my observations of the response to the excitement generated by the potential, because unfortunately it didn't take place, the potential of the 6th Pan-African Congress, which was supposed to take place in Lomé last October, but didn't. But of course, nobody knew it wasn't going to take place, and so everybody tried to prepare for it. And in a sense, my remarks can be clustered around a challenge, if you like, between the notion of Africa must unite and Africans must unite. So before I go to talk about what was going on the continent, I just want to state something that you touched on. It's an obvious thing, but it's crucially important. Crucially important because this 9th Pan-African Congress was specifically organized and called for by the African Union, not like the other ones by civil society. And that is the AU.
Senator Kashim Shettima, our Vice President, who was here with us a moment ago. May I say, Your Excellencies, all the governors, please allow me not to mention you by name, but to say all the governors, past and present, and may I recognize Mohammed Deputy Secretary General of the UN. And I think what you want to know is that our father going back to my west, were escaped to the government college now college. Nice to see you here representing all our women that we must all respect, all our mothers. Also, I plan. As a statesman who has witnessed Nigeria's journey through various phases, I'm delighted to see a new generation of leaders like Dr. Fayemi and his dear wife, who embody the value of integrity, compassion, and selfless service. This occasion marks not only the beginning of a significant initiative, but also a commitment to the values of compassion, community, and progress that we hold.
We can never stop praising you. Well, I was not actually prepared for this, but it's really a great privilege to be able to stand up before you and say a few words about my Aburo. And we hope that one day also he will be our JFK of Nigeria. He more or less almost is already. But it was a privilege serving with him in cabinet, and you could, I mean, a lot of people have spoken already, but the intellect is the first thing that hits you. And as his better half has pointed out, just how focused he is, how committed he is. And, you know, interestingly, we've also heard about Pan-Africanism. And I was speaking to somebody earlier today, and I was saying that the way the world has changed so much, that if you call yourself a socialist, and I used to like to think of myself as one, it's almost like a swear word. You know, nobody wants to admit to it. But JKF, I always confuse the acronyms, is really one of that rare breed of Nigerians with a vision. We've heard a lot said today about what we need in Africa, the vision. He has a clear vision, that great focus, the intellect, and that revolutionary zeal. And I think that's one of the things that we are lacking. You know, we talk about leadership in Africa today, that revolutionary zeal. We're often harking back to some of our great leaders, some of those leaders that we do admire. And one of the things that makes them stand out is that revolutionary zeal. And when we talk about where we've got it wrong and the leadership vacuum that we have on the continent, it's probably because we are lacking those leaders, those revolutionary style leaders. And when we listen to what JFK has been all about, JKF, it is about that. That allied to that intellect is that zeal, that revolutionary spirit to transform our continent. Having served on the world stage, we've become so used to a lot of talk shops, a lot of summits, African leaders attending summits, and you know, just going through the motions. And I think that today really calls for that revolutionary spirit. And
2022 had a meeting of the
Nigeria's Government Forum, the presence of the President, and Dr. Fayemi was then the President of JKF and was elected as the President of the Forum of the Regions of Africa. I am the Secretary General of the United States and the Government of Africa, and the Forum of the Region of Africa is part of this organization, the Continental Organization. And we saw the dedication of Dr. Fayemi. I had the privilege then to be hosted the dinner by Madame and Mr. Fayemi in the presence of two governors of the US. And I remember the wisdom, the foresight, and also the narrative of Dr. Fayemi about building Africa from the grassroots.
BBC Fayemi and your sister for all the wonderful support you've given my brother. Thank you very much. I hope this salutation is out of the 5 minutes. When a two-term governor and a chairman of Nigeria's Governors Forum and a federal minister writes a book on leadership and governance, everybody should pay attention. But if that author also holds a doctorate in World Studies from King's College and is a visiting professor in the same college and was a pro-democracy activist at the national and the continental level, then you should drop everything you are doing and listen carefully. I use the word listen because although what we present today is a book, it actually originates as spoken words delivered at various forums and events over a period of time since the author left office as governor of Ekiti State in 2022. Indeed, this book here that we present is a testimony to how busy Dr. Fayemi has been since he left office, confirming his place as one of Nigeria's foremost intellectuals.
Prof, you can take a copy and join the room. Okay. As we begin to interrogate the very essence of Pan-Africanism, we welcome you, Prof. She's still very agile. Take a copy of the book. Your Excellency, the Governor. So while we're having the photograph, let me appreciate and welcome Professor Oyewale Tamari, a professor of virology. I understand you're a pride to the continent and our nation. Prof, we welcome you. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. So as they step down with copies of the book, let's continue to appreciate them. Thank you very much. Thank you. Apart from this book, the other book,
Your Excellency, my own governor and brother, Governor Biodun Abami Oyebanji, Your Excellency, my other governor, well, at least I married from your state, so you are my governor. Governor Lucky Oribison Ayedatiwa. In Ekiti, we have what our people refer to as the grandfather governor. And then you have the father governor. And then you have the governor. The grandfather governor who has been the spirit behind the success of progressive politics in our state, and his lovely wife, His Excellency Otumba Adebayo, is here, and Orewangela Adebayo. I'm immensely grateful. Very many of my colleagues are here, former governors. Some of them have left already, but I can see two of them who are paying the price for coming late. I can see my brother, Governor Simon Bakola Long, who has moved sideways to the Senate, where he's busy focusing on appropriation of budget. He's here. And my brother, former governor of Niger State, Governor Abdulsani Bello, distinguished senator of the Federal Republic, is here. As I said, so many of them have left. Our royal fathers, Kabesi, are still here, and I thank you immensely for honoring me with your presence here from all over the country. The Jaja of Okobo was here earlier, Sarkin Kano was here, the Sultan has been represented, my own fathers from Ekiti. Of course, the Imperial Majesty himself led that delegation, the Ooni of Ife, has been here with us. A lot of my comrades and friends are here, the Board of Trustees of Amandla Institute. Many of them are here. You have not had the privilege of really meeting them, and I would just urge them to stand up for recognition. Professor Batili, Professor Tangi Kiwane from South Africa, Dr. Alice Karakezi from Rwanda, and Bamidele Olateju from here. I can see Dr. Yan Sako somewhere there, and of course, Mr. John Olajide, Chairman of Corporate Council of Africa, who is also on our Board of Trustees here, and so many others. Honorable ministers are here. Of course, my family members are here, my siblings are here, my very, very close friends are here. Their addition comes from Atlanta all the way, their kingdoms are here. My brother Ken Adibe from DePaul University is here. The great Gio, my mom from Christ School and the Home Front, Bengaebo De, Kalde Falawo, so many. If I haven't mentioned your name, it's not an expression of how important you are or not. It's just that I can see everybody here from where I stand. But a lot of my family members are here, my sisters. Of course, many people wonder, they see Jimmy fleetingly, he comes in and then disappears back to his Atlanta base. And when I insist that you must go and meet this person, he must go and say, no, I'm like you, Dad. I am not for the show. I just want to be in my corner. But he's here to honor his dad as well. Really, 60 years is a dot in the life of a nation. But if you're talking of individuals, 60 years is actually quite retirement age in many countries. But in the age of AI, I think 60 is the new 30. So many have been saying, okay, is he going to relax? My governor has been whispering in my ear, saying, okay, finally, I think it's now time to slow down and spend more time at home with Erelu, which is true. I owe her a lot of that, in fairness to all the sacrifices that she rendered to this journey. But, you know, in our local parlance, the Yoruba parlance, and I'll try and translate, I'm not exactly a specialist, our elders tell us that Baoku, so until you breathe your last, the work continues. The job is not yet done. And we cannot see the squalor and the poverty and the inequality around us, even if we're privileged and can still eat 3 square meals a day, and forget what is happening to the larger majority of our people. And I think that is really what Amandla Institute speaks to. That is the responsibility that we have assigned to ourselves as Africans who believe in Africa and also register that Africa has a central role to play in the transformation of our globe. So the debate has started, the debate is going to continue, and it's not a debate between an immovable object and an unstoppable force, as Folajimi would describe the internal debate we have at home between his mother and I, when we have issues either of politics or leadership or service in contention. It's one that would continue to happen, and that's partly what, if this giant must rise, the conditions that the African giant need to respond to, need to meet, and the role that Nigeria as a giant within that giant also must play in order to help tackle the challenges that confront us on the continent. But on behalf of my wife, who really has been the spirit behind this, I am not exactly an organizer in that sense, but she lives and dreams organizing. So she's managed to put this together with the assistance of an excellent team of colleagues and friends, from our CEO, Professor Adebayo Olukoshi, to Ege Odewale, that many of you have known with me since my days at the CDD, and Dayo Ajibaye, and Bumi Obanishe. A whole lot of them have been involved behind the scenes in helping to put this together. And our Board of Trustees, they've been here for the last couple of days, also working behind the scene to really clarify how we want to make sure that once this organization is formally inaugurated, it's not the last you hear of Amandla Institute. You will start hearing a lot more about what we set out to do to assist the great work our sister is doing at the UN, that a number of our colleagues are doing in many multilateral institutions and in our various governments. And on that note, I don't want to keep you here any longer than necessary. Many of us have been here since 9 a.m. and it's now almost 3 p.m. That's a record, 6 hours, and the room is still almost full. So on behalf of my wife, my family members, on behalf of the trustees and board members of Amandla Institute, I really must thank you all. Most of all, our chairperson, of course, our special guest of honor in absentia, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Of course, as many of you know, has had to take a trip, and he insisted that the Vice President must not only come and represent him. He wrote a beautiful tribute. When you get your book of tribute, you will see what President Tinubu has written there about our years in exile and the work that we've done together over the last 30-35 years. of pushing the frontiers for better democracy and a better society on the continent. And all that remains for me is to really thank everyone who has spent this day with us and express immense gratitude for your celebration with me on this occasion. I know that the real grand event belongs to Ekiti people. I don't want those who own me outside of Ekiti to be jealous, but you are invited to come to Ekiti over this weekend. So you can have part of the fun and enjoy the true hospitality of Ekiti people if you have the time and the chance to join us in Ekiti. On this note, thank you very much for honoring us, His Eminence. You remain our father, and I also plead on behalf of my sister for that misnaming. I
have most of our royal fathers from Ekiti State. Oba Dejuwon Gabriel Ayodele Onisan of Iso Ekiti. Ishon, okay. Oba Adebanji Ajibade Alabi Alawe of Ilawe Ekiti.